What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm so honored to have back on the show for a second time ritual abuse, military mind control, and organized abuse survivor, thriver, and whistleblower, loving mother, writer, painter, and graphic artist, daydreamer of publishing her own book one day, content creator, nature lover, 12-step fellowship, and survivor support group participant, and a courageous warrioress bringing a light to the darkness that is RAMCOA, Mary Sparrow. Here is a little bit about Mary if you guys missed last episode or need a refresher, and a little bit of what you can expect to hear about on today's episode. From the very first days of her life, Mary entered a world that tried to break her before she could even speak. Born in a Catholic hospital in Manhattan, she was taken from her mother for weeks, an eerie separation that set the tone for a childhood steeped in both fleeting love and unrelenting terror. Her father, a former paratrooper in the 101st Airborne Division turned bar owner, began sexually abusing Mary in her earliest years. Her mother, shaped by her own generational trauma from impoverished, oppressed Ireland in the 1930s and 40s, responded with verbal and physical outbursts rooted in unresolved pain. By age 4, Mary was drawn into a nightmare far darker than most can imagine, a child sex trafficking network in New York City area involving ritual abuse, child pornography, exploitation, and highly sophisticated military mind control programming designed to shatter her psyche and silence her soul. She was taken to lab-like facilities with men in uniforms and white coats, strapped into chairs with helmets and wires, subjected to electricity, pain, and psychological torment that forced her to dissociate, floating out of her body to survive. She witnessed horrors, including things like ritual sacrifice and organized abuse involving pedophile networks and powerful figures. Programming instilled false pride, sexualized affection mixed with pain, and discard protocols meant to ensure she would self-destruct later in life. Yet even through all that silent internal turmoil, a quiet, unbreakable fire burned inside her. A compassionate spiritual energy intervened at key moments, exposing the lies and planting seeds of resistance that would one day set her free. Her mother's courageous escape when Mary was 10 and a half ended the active trafficking and ritual horrors. The physical captivity ended, but the internal programming remained ruthless. In her early 40s, while deep in 12-step recovery, past memories began surfacing in gentle fragments. Journaling, intuitive drawing, and painting became lifelines. Motherhood to her beloved daughter opened a wellspring of unconditional love, allowing Mary to create the joyful, nurturing childhood she had been denied. Nature served as her sacred cathedral and healer. Therapy, holistic practices like yoga and acupuncture, and especially her tribe of fellow ritual abuse and mind control survivors, gave her the family and support she had always craved. She learned to be gentle with herself, to question the lies of worthlessness, and to release stored trauma through movement, creativity, and honest sharing in 12-step fellowships. Today, Mary is a radiant beacon of hard-won triumph. She lives with a joy that once felt impossible, her days filled with writing and dreaming of the memoir that will one day reach thousands, creating art that processes flashbacks and balances darkness with vibrant light, music that stirs her soul, poetry that ignites memories of the past, and profound connection in survivor circles. And this is what we will be sharing about more of today. Mary's creativity through her own artwork and poetry. On Mary's last episode, sharing time through her artwork, grappling with the reality of ritual abuse and taking in moments from the past, Mary vulnerably shared that stirred and came to life behind the paint on the paper. On today's episode, we will be showcasing more of Mary's artwork and introducing some of her collages and poetry. The creativity through art that survivors are able to express while processing memories and flashbacks, and often through different parts coming forward, can often speak louder than mere words. And Mary's drawings, painting, words, and creative designs are no different. This will be a really unique and special episode featuring many visuals we will be showing on the screen. So if you are listening and not watching, I'd recommend sitting with this episode at some point when you can really take in the audio and visual collaboration to get the full experience of what Mary will be discussing and sharing today. Mary speaks not for the fame or the attention, but for love, for the friends lost too young, for every soul still trapped, and for the truth that shatters chains. Mary is proof that even after the deepest trauma and betrayal, the human spirit can soar into awe-inspiring freedom. She has transformed engineered hell into a life of purpose, creativity, connection, and advocacy. She rose, she spoke, she healed, and now lives so fully that her courage ignites flames of possibility across the world. She honors the vulnerable, comforts the broken, and reminds every silenced voice that light always wins. Mary carries the scars of a survivor and transforms them into art, words, and fierce, loving advocacy. The world is forever brighter because she refused to stay silent. And the best news, her story is not over. It is only beginning to shine. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming back today's guest of honor, survivor, thriver, and walking miracle, survivor and survivor support group advocate, intuitive creative, fierce mama bear, destroyer of lies, passionate purveyor of truth, and a true voice for the voiceless, lending her voice to those without one, the only, Mary Sparrow, aka Mary Sunshine. Mary, it is so good to have you back. Thank you so much for coming on for another episode.
Oh man, thank you so much, Emma. I'm so touched by that. I'm tearing up a little bit. That was such a beautiful introduction. I really appreciate you taking the time to write that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're so deserving of it. And your last episode,
I think you're fabulously amazing as well, Emma. Talk about shiner of light. Thank you.
We were talking before we hit record about just the outpouring of love that you got on the last episode. And I just wanted to start real quick and just acknowledge that and thank everybody, whether you're on Instagram or social media, or if you guys were on YouTube. The response to Mary's testimony and all the vulnerability that she shared was just amazing. So I just wanted to start and thank everybody for that. And also to you, Mary, you poured so much more out than I think even you expected to on that last episode. We spent a lot more time together than what we initially thought we would, and it was just a really, really powerful episode. So for anybody who missed that, I'm going to have that down in the show notes for you guys. And it's not required you guys listen before you hear this one, but maybe after you guys listen to this one, go check out her testimony too if you missed it. But Mary, it's so good to have you back. How have you been since last time?
Oh, it's been eventful. I'm still having flashbacks. So that's part of my daily routine kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of intensity going on in our society right now. So I'm sensitive, so I can pick up on that and stuff. Yeah. How about you? How are you doing since the last time?
I'm doing good. I'm just honored that I get to do this type of work, in the midst of, especially the time that we're at right now, where we are being met with more support and belief talking about this and a little bit less censorship, I feel, too. So it kind of brings me back to the topic of today's podcast. I think once we know what some of this underbelly of society entails through testimonies like yours, I think the next steps are going to be learning how to support survivors, the healing processes, and then for survivors too, to be able to take their power back, especially when we're so bombarded with so much trauma just in our everyday lives and the news. We had the Epstein files come out, which is both exciting and can also be very hard for survivors who feel like there's a spotlight on them now. And so I think, this is just going to be a really powerful episode, getting to hear how you go through some of your flashbacks and kind of your daily routine and how you care for yourself during that process, as well as like what pours out of you onto paper. So I kind of want to turn it over to you, and let's start talking about, some of the flashbacks and what even inspired you to begin to do artwork in any capacity to begin with?
Well, I had been in 12-step meetings for years, attending different fellowships for years, and then I eventually ended up going to AA and giving up drinking, which I think was the alcohol was really keeping a lid on my memories. And so about 2 years into AA and sobriety, I started having very, very powerful panic attacks. And then those eventually led to me starting to have flashbacks, which I didn't know I didn't know what a flashback was. I think I knew vaguely from maybe hearing about Vietnam veterans.
Mhm.
But I was having very, very, it kind of felt like a sensation of a wave of energy coming over me. And then my body would start responding with pain. And it was almost as if I felt like my entire system was ejecting something. And I would get, they would come with very deep emotions sometimes, and I would feel smaller or powerless. And then I'd get pain in my head and my wrists, in my vagina, and it was very intense. And it started, it kind of, in the very beginning, it started mild, but then it kind of built quickly because I realized I couldn't just ignore them. I tried to ignore them in the beginning, and they would get stronger and stronger as if trying to demand my attention. So I was journaling about them and journaling as I was having them. But the intensity of them was so frightening to me and overwhelming. And I was having a lot of body pain too, that if I got very desperate, I got very, to be honest, angry at the universe because I felt I was in recovery. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. And all of a sudden I'm having these incredible episodes. I didn't even know what to call them. So I asked my higher power, which I was calling the universe back then. I said, look, you have to please show me a way to deal with what's going on with me in my body, because I cannot handle this. And I told them I'm going to start seriously doing drugs again to shut this down, to numb out. And I was thinking, either like going to a doctor and trying to get pharmaceuticals, or going back to street drugs or something, so I was very desperate, and I kept getting the intuition to start drawing. And I didn't want to do that. I was like, I am not a trained artist. I do not know how to draw. I just resisted it in the beginning. But after a few more really intense and painful flashbacks, I became willing, basically, because I wasn't getting any other guidance. I was still going to 12-step meetings, and so it was actually sheer desperation to find a way to navigate this without having to go back to drugs. And so I remember where I was at when I started drawing, and I remember, I'm just put it down. I had been in a 12-step meeting with an artist who I liked, and he told me that children have the ability to just put it down on paper. They don't think about, like, is this going to look good? Are people going to be able to tell what I'm drawing? They don't care. they know what they're drawing, and so they just do it. And I had also found this book years before. I just wanted to show it. Life, Paint, and Passion. Can you see it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh,
that's the book I
colorful
found.
cover.
Excuse me?
I said it's a really colorful cover. I
I
like
know,
it.
that's what first drew me to it. And they talked, and I was actually doing like kind of colorful abstract drawings and some paintings and stuff. But I wasn't having flashbacks then. And so this was a totally different kind of drawing where I was going to be drawing what the images that were coming to me in my head as best I could, and so I knew about drawing from my intuition, because basically one of the things they talk about in the book is just taking whatever image comes to mind and putting it down, and don't trying to, it doesn't have to be a whole picture in my mind. I can just, like I would get an image of a swastika and I would just put a swastika down sometimes, and then it would build. Then I'd see a dog over here and I'd be like, okay, I'll draw a dog over here. And then the picture would it's kind of like a puzzle coming together. And so it was a journey for me, like what is going to appear on the paper. And my early drawings were very, very crude. I sent you some that were just very practically stick figures, I just couldn't. But the magic for me was, as soon as I became willing to do it, as soon as I just started, my entire body, I'm gonna cry, like my entire body would calm down, and like all this intensity and pain, because the energy was so powerful. I swear I was ejecting my entire system was ejecting this. And it was, it was like turning down the volume from a 9 to a 4 or a 3, because then I still could feel what was going on in my body, but it was so much more manageable when I was drawing. I think I was grounding the energy by physically putting it on paper, physically expressing it. So that was very apparent to me in the beginning. And, I still would resist. My ego was very, I wanted to be, I had a tendency to be a people pleaser.
Mm.
And I didn't want to look stupid or bad. I was like, I want to look cool. I want to look good or whatever. And this isn't about, and that's another thing I learned in recovery. There's actually a great saying in recovery: you can't save your ass and your face at the same time. And sometimes, it's got to be ugly. It's got to be, you're crying so hard the snot is dripping from your nose, and you're just like, so yeah. So I had to be willing to let go of that and just get humble and put it down. So that was the beginning of my journey, and that was 14 years ago. That's when that started. Yeah, 2012. And around this time, I think it was March, April 2012. So yeah, in fact, I included one of my very first drawings in the drawings I gave you, which was, well, first, from my intuition, I did the crucifixes with the swastikas around them, and that scared the shit out of me. I was like, why is this coming out of me? It really terrified me. I think I was tapping into the memory as I drew that too. And then the next drawing was of I think it was the first flashback I had. It's the one with the red and the black, kind of looks like a watercolor, and I'm on the floor and someone's holding me down. It's very raw. It's very
This one. Okay.
That's one. And then the one before that you did was also an early drawing. If you want to look at that's an early drawing. And then the other one the other way is an early drawing of that red one.
Oh, and then you see here you're talking about with like the dog too and the swastika.
Yes.
Pieces that came together.
That's right. That's right.
Must obey your master at all times. Well, at the time, did you have the memories behind this? Did you recall, or were you really perplexed about what was spilling out onto the page?
I was actually having the flashback and then just drawing as I was having the flashback.
Wow.
So it was kind of showing me these scenes associated with all these body memories I was having. And it was kind of revealing it to me, and I'm like, oh my God, because I saw this, and in the flashback, I remembered being led. Someone was holding my hand, and I looked to the right, and I was in a bar. There was bar stools against a bar. It was for the other one, the red one. I was small. I remember being someone holding my hand, and I looked and I saw the bar with the bar stools, and they were tall. That's how I knew I was small. And then we went downstairs, and this is what I painted. This is what happened in the basement.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm not sure but that could be my father there, the tall man. But as that child part can't fully admit that. So it would say, there's a man there that looks like my father. That part of me.
Oh my gosh.
But I was being held down. There were other men there, and they were holding me down. So yes, that was one of the very first ones. And as you can see, I was just doing the best with the skills I had. But it was I like this drawing because it's very, to me, it's raw, but it kind of captures the energy of the fright. To me, it captures how frightening it was for me, and overwhelming, and the violence of it all, kind of. So yeah,
I agree. It has like an intensity to it, especially because it wasn't very fine lines that you used either. It's like a thicker outline for everything, and it has this just shockingness to it that spills right through the page and into your heart.
Yeah. So
this one's a little bit more of like the thinner lines to it. Somewhat different colors. You have is that an angel in the background?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Loving being. I felt the presence of a loving being giving me love and light. And that was a little while later, and I was starting to get a little more like, ambitious, like, oh, can I put a banner in the background, and figuring it out how to do it all. So, as best I could. And that was really helpful for me too, because focusing on and I was having the flashback while I was drawing it, but focusing on details like that, like how do I make a cage in the corner? How do I make a banner in the background? That would sometimes give me moments of peace where I would be so focused. I think that's part of the healing, is focusing my mind on something. So yeah, there's another early one too I included. But it's very sad. I remember they said, I don't know if you can see the script, but it says they were telling me that the dog died because I didn't obey. It was my fault that the dog was killed. And he's saying, I think you must obey the master at all times. Yeah.
Where you're over here pleading, please don't hurt the dog.
Yes, that in my mind. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if I was saying it out loud or not, but I usually wasn't allowed to talk. But that was early on. That was an earlier memory. So yeah, it was horrifying. It was very traumatizing, and that was their intention, I think.
Yes. And I love how you said too that the art sort of calmed you. I think a lot of times we're really compelled to just talk about stuff, which is still good. But I think talking when you're already really emotional can sometimes feel more anxiety ridden and more stressful. Where I think writing, when you're not talking and you're just letting the art speak for itself, I think it really does just have this effect of activating our parasympathetic nervous system to where we can sort of breathe with the memory and process it without the intensity that it comes with.
Yeah.
And it just has sort of a different effect to express than just simply talking it through.
No, I agree. I think I heard somewhere that the right side of the brain is deals with intuition, impressions, art, creativity, and then the left side of the brain is language, words, facts. I think I forget all the ones that were there, but and I think being on the right side of the brain is and drawing, it just accesses a whole other part of me that it's I can't. It's kind of like I'll be able to come out with things that I wouldn't if I was on the left side of the brain and just using language. So I think both, it's good to have both balanced and stuff, but I didn't. I was always over here on the left side with the words and stuff. So.
And it sort of has the ability to combine the hemispheres because you can express on paper and then use the logic from the memory and the recall with the left side of the brain and be able to form a real life, the real life kind of memory or the expression that happened in reality behind what's on the paper.
Yes. I think that's a great insight. Yeah.
And I really appreciate you showing that. I think you mentioned a really great point earlier that about children, how they're not thinking critically about their artwork. They just express, whether it's, in a sandbox on paper, whether they have little finger paints, clay, whatever it is, they're just playing and expressing through it. And they're proud of what they do. And it's like happy for them.
Yes.
And I think we get that really, beaten out of us whenever we go to school. All of a sudden, art is a skill. It's something you have to be technically sound at, something you have to excel in. It's a class that you sign up to take. And if you're not good at it, you're probably not going to go in that class with other artists. So you just don't do it. No. And I think over time, we lose our creative aspect. We lose our imagination. We just kind of shut it off and we live in that left brain of just logic and math and, how to get from here to here without the creative expression that can be so very healing for us. And I think you showing those, I really appreciate you showing some of the earlier ones because it's a great reminder that you don't have to be great to do art. You can do art as a form of self-expression and healing, of processing. It doesn't have to be something that's going to be in an art museum or, something that you're going to sell online. Not even anything you ever have to show anybody. It can just be simply for you as a way to express. And I love that your art, you can look back on it fondly and appreciate that aspect of it, that you just started, you did it, you listened to that intuition that you had versus, oh, I'm not good, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, no, I learned a lot of that too from the punk scene in New York in the 80s. It was the early punks, and there was a very strong kind of belief that you don't have to be skilled at something to enjoy doing it. And there were so many bands. Are you familiar with the Ramones at
Yeah,
all?
yeah.
They literally could not play their instruments. And I think when they very first started, they knew three chords. Um, and they couldn't play anyone else's songs because they were so limited in what they knew that they started writing songs that could be played with three chords. That's all their early thing, all their early
Oh,
stuff in the very beginning was super simple, but it's amazing what you can do with three chords, and your imagination, and they just wanted it. I was thinking it's kind of like the analogy of a bicycle. I remember when I was a kid, I just wanted to ride a bike because I wanted that exhilaration and that freedom. And I just, I would keep trying and trying and falling and trying, but I didn't care if I fell or whatever because I just was so determined to fly along like the other kids. And and gradually I got better, but that's kind of the same um, like attitude the early punk kids I met had was like, this is fun. It's fun to be in a band. It's fun to hang out with your friends. And so what if we just make noise in the beginning? And what happened was a lot of those bands just learned as they went and gradually got better and stronger. So that had a big impact on me, and there's another name for that, which is process instead of product, where you're doing something just because it feels good to do, not to create something that's good or bad, or just you're focused on the process instead of what comes out at the end.
what a great lesson. And sort of to piggyback off that, you did mention in the last episode that we did together in your testimony, you talked a lot about the punk scene and what it was to you, like the healing aspects of it, of what it did to your soul, your heart going through that. However, there was some darkness to it that you sort of realized in hindsight as an adult, looking back and seeing some of the iconography, seeing some of the darkness that was kind of shrouded in all the excitement. And I wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about that, because you actually included some photos of that I thought might be fun to show.
Yeah, sure. I well i i as when in my 20s, I was very drawn to the punk kids. I thought they were some of the coolest kids around. They're very expressive. There was a lot of creativity going on in the Lower East Side, and they were dressing very just with a lot of freedom of self-expression, and really going outside the box, because this was the early 80s and punk wasn't around for very long at that point. And so it was still very shocking to people to see some of the hairstyles and piercings and all the stuff that was going on. I was drawn to certain images, and I know now that was because on a deep level there was a part of me who knew what I had been through as a child. And I have a theory that there's a lot of government mind control and ritual abuse, and MK Ultra survivors were in that early punk scene. And so there were these themes that were being expressed over and over, like fascination with the swastika. I didn't wear a swastika because the kids I hung out with, that was really uncool to, but I knew deep inside I had a fascination with it, and it bothered me because I knew I didn't stand for what anything that Hitler believed in. I was like the opposite of his belief. I had the opposite of his beliefs, but I realize now, looking back, I think I wanted to wear it because there was like a part of me that wanted to say, I wanted to out it to people. There was a part of me that wanted to say, look, people, this hasn't gone away. This is still happening. But I didn't have conscious memories of that time. So I just knew I had this urge to somehow show the world that it was still around or something. And then this is a photo of a early punk girl that I really like because I used to wear a dog collar like she did too. I was very attracted to that kind of look and bondage gear. And I know now that was my subconscious mind giving me clues and signals of what had happened to me. Because I have very clear memories of being in a pedophile group where I did wear a dog collar. And there were my abusers literally put me on a chain and would like bring me out and show me to their friends when I was a small little child in this network in New York. And so I believe that there were a lot of kids who had gone through similar things, because I know there was a big punk scene in England, and England had their own version of MK Ultra. And they too brought in Nazis after World War II. Yeah, several countries grabbed Nazis. I think it was France, England, the United States, and I'm not sure who else, but it's all documented. There's a great book called, God, I forget her name, but there's a book written on it that was a New York Times bestseller about 15 years ago, maybe. It's called Project Paperclip, so yeah, it's very well documented. It's just that not a lot of people know about it. Yeah, so here's another girl with the obsession or the attraction to the dog collar and the swastika. And I saw that over and over. And then there's another picture of a punk in here that I thought was very interesting, because the whole thing with spiky hair. If now that I think about it, it looks like someone got electrocuted. All that hair standing up straight and spiky, like him. That's Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols. I love this photo because that's how I felt. I felt like a mess. His button says I'm a mess. But like, look at the spiky hair. Like, and then the leopard print. Oh my God, I had a leopard print obsession.
Oh, no way.
And now I know there's an article written by Fritz Springmeier called The Origins and Techniques of Monarch Mind Control. There is a level of programming in Monarch Mind Control it's beta programming, but it's also known as cat programming. And feline prints and are kind of signals of that programming. And I had multiple pieces of clothing that were leopard prints. I once had a full leopard print coat, completely leopard print. So that was also very predominant in the early punk scene too. Animal prints, cat prints. And again, like the bondage gear, and then this super sexualized dress of a lot of the women and girls were. And I think that was, for me, that was from being trained to be a slave, sexual slave, in the programming and in the pedophile groups. So, because what I love about the early punk scene was it was a grassroots phenomena. It came from the streets. It came from people's creativity and their hearts and minds. And so when there's these common themes, to me now that I look back and I was like, how many of my friends, because we are all into the same thing, how many of my friends were also survivors who, or reject, pushed out of a program for some reason and survived? Because a lot of these kids, including myself, had a lot of PTSD, had a very hard time functioning in society. And I ended up, along with some of my friends, living in abandoned buildings on the Lower East Side.
Oh,
It was called squatting because it was just easier. It was too hard for me personally, to hold a job. I would have a really hard, I tried multiple times, but I would go maybe a few months and then something would happen at work. And I know now I would get triggered deeply and I'd be in so much pain, and I thought it was my boss's fault or a coworker's fault. I would blame them. I didn't realize I was wounded and they were just touching the wound in me. So I would leave jobs. I'd be enraged, like I'm not working for this place anymore. They're horrible people. And it was really me who was really wounded. And it just became easier to kind of drop out of society and just live a lifestyle that was a lot less stressful in some ways. And just like, I remember hanging out at the park a lot and then not having to pay rent because we were squatting these abandoned buildings. And I just basically needed money for food and stuff like that. So there were a lot of kids like that on the Lower East Side, runaways. And so I wonder now if, that's where they were coming from, those kind of programs.
And it makes you reflect on a lot of different trends that you see in society, whether it's an actual sort of all-encompassing movement like this, where you were sort of at the front and center of the mecca of it in New York City, this movement happening, and you see these groups of people coming together and sort of, dressing alike and doing some of the iconography that you showed. But you also think about people who just have tons of piercings, or people who get their entire bodies tattooed, or they mutilate their face and, cut their tongue into like a lizard tongue, or just all these different ways that it's been like trendy to sort of like mutilate yourself, or to show these different patterns, like you said, clothing and different things that people are attracted to. It makes you really think about, what's the story behind that? Is that person just super happy and healthy and they just decided to go get 100 piercings? Or is their unconscious mind like really, sort of screaming like how yours was, with feeling the desire to wear a swastika for no reason, nothing that stood out to you, just everybody's doing it. But like you said, later on, you could identify that a part of you wanted to express, and sort of be like, I'm here, I went through something and I can tell it now, even if I'm not saying the words, like I'm signaling,
Yeah, I think it's a healing. I think it's a way of healing, because it's a way of processing trauma or something, is expressing it in some way. And to be honest, the people I hung out with were not wearing swastikas, but I saw photos of people who were, like, from England or from, and I related to that desire to wear one, but it wasn't because, there was a strong belief that no, that's fascism. That's not cool, with the punks I hung out with. But secretly I wanted to and stuff. So yeah, I think it is. It's the psyche's way of trying to heal itself, expressing.
right. And even how you were saying some of like the BDSM stuff, you still see that today. It doesn't necessarily mean somebody's like into punk rock, but you see that trending where like girls will wear things like that to be cool, or wear leather, or things that have spikes on them, or men, but it really sort of does beg that question behind the scenes of is there something underlying there that's being expressed unconsciously?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. I'd be curious too if, other survivors have similar experiences of being attracted to certain things before they had their memories, that looking back, they can sort of see it was the body expressing the past versus it being an organic attraction that they had.
Yeah. No, there was a very strong club scene in New York, and this was before the internet and cell phones and everything. So they would print little flyers, little pieces of paper they were called, flyers or invitations to clubs, and they'd have artwork on them. And I remember finding a club flyer that had an image of a woman in a dominatrix outfit with a whip, and she had the black leather boots and all the very the dominatrix. It's kind of a dominant. I'm trying to describe it, but anyway, and she's whipping, and there's a little circle of tiny children around her, and she's whipping at them. And it was a club promo thing, and I remember being drawn to it and fascinated by it, but at the same time horrified. It scared me. I'm like, why do I like this picture so much? And I know now that because that was what was going on in the pedophile groups, where there were all these little kids and these people who were into fetish and sexual deviancy or whatever, or sexual, predator, being a predator to a child. It was a mirror of what I had been through, but I hadn't remembered yet. And that was why the fascination. And in fact, I would encourage survivors to start collecting images of things that they find fascinating or they're very drawn to for some reason, and they're not, even if they're not sure why, and putting them away in a box somewhere, just collect, to collect images and photographs or even pictures from magazines and then I think Kathy O'Brien talks about this too in one of her books, but she says, and then when you have a big pile of images, you just start making collages with them one day and don't even think about it too much. Just throw them together in a way that makes sense. And I know several survivors who have done that, and then years later, after some memories come back, they look at those collages and say, oh my God, my subconscious was telling me way back then, what happened to me. So
I completely agree. I've had a couple survivors on my show collages, and I believe Kathy O'Brien just displayed some of her own collages in one of her brand new books that just came out, because she does speak about that. And I've experienced the same thing on my podcast with other survivors, that they just randomly compile these different graphics and photos and words they paste them on a sheet of paper into a collage, and then doesn't really make sense. And some of it's kind of morbid, or some of it just sounds kind of off or weird, but then they end up getting context for it soon after, or maybe like you said, years later, they might finally realize what was being spoken through those photos and the things that they, for some reason, picked out of that magazine and were attracted to.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. It really, I think it's amazing.
I do too. And so what do you say we bring up some more of your art, and you can share as much or a little as you want, but we can flow through some of these and show some of these really incredible photos or artwork that you provided. Okay, I'm just going to start at the beginning. So this is very different from the other couple that we showed, which were more of the black and red colors with some figures and events that seem to be happening. This it just looks happy and more abstract.
Yeah, I think I did this before my memories started, but it was close to when it was right before soon after I started having memories. And I really felt as I drew this, full disclosure, I have the original drawing wasn't as vibrant, and I later got a um, iPad and was able to put it on. I think it's called Procreate. There's a thing where, and I was able to make the colors more vibrant and stuff.
Oh,
Yeah, and cleaned it up a little. It had been originally a marker. I did it with markers, and it had gotten dirty, so I cleaned it up on in that program. But yeah, I really felt as I was making this, and I was drawing from my intuition. I started with the heart in the middle, and then it just kind of expanded out more and more from there. But I really felt I was tapping into some kind of um, deep love, deep healing reassurance, and it took me a while to finish it, and I felt as I was drawing, I was tapping into that beautiful energy, and in a way, it was helping me, it was strengthening me, and it was preparing me for what was going to happen soon, which was the ritual abuse and mind control memories coming. So I love this picture. It reminds me of that every time I see it.
it just feels like love just bursting out. And
Yeah.
I want to ask, just knowing that this almost seemed to preface the healing that you would be going through after you remembered. This was kind of before its time in a sense. After you would remember, knowing that you had before drawn something like this, was this something you could go back to when
Yeah,
you were processing and in those heavy emotions and get some comfort from?
absolutely. That's a great, thank you, Emma. That's so true. It was. Because I would feel like there were times I felt like I'm in hell with these memories that are coming out of my body, because they were coming up every day. And then I literally, I'll never forget, I went to a copy machine store and got color copies of this. And I gave some to my friends, but I also had some around my house. I think I had one on the wall somewhere.
Oh my
And
God.
that's exactly what happens. I would be going through hell with these drawings, with the flashbacks and the very intense and getting it out and drawing it out, and then I'd go into the kitchen or something to get something to eat, and I would see this, and it would be just like, oh God, maybe I'm gonna be okay. Maybe.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah, totally. That's exactly what was happening.
how amazing are our minds that they can do all of this without your conscious knowing in some parts of your system, that you can just be going about your day, draw something like this, not forget about it, but set it off to the side and be like, oh, that's pretty, it makes me feel good. But then
Mhm.
it like ends up foreshadowing what you're going to be going through. And it was like created to help you get through it. I mean, that's just
Yes,
amazing.
yes, I know. I think that was they talk about there's a high, I believe in a higher self or my soul or something that's very wise. And so I think there was some part of me that knew she's going to need some healing images down the road to fall back on, or whatever. So,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, bless those parts that created this. What an amazing photo. I love this one. I would love to hang it on my wall too. It's just so happy.
Maybe I'll make it into a print someday. That would be fun.
You
Yeah.
should, and then sell it. I would
Mhm.
buy one. I love this.
I'll give you one, Emma. You deserve one. Gifts. Yeah.
And so I think the next one is this girl we shared. And so I'll go
Hmm.
to this one, which is the same color schemes, very alike the first couple that we talked about.
Yeah, but again, my drawing skills weren't so great, so I would do simple shapes. It's just, and I remember it was such an accomplishment for me to figure out how to put people around the table. At the time, I was like, how do I do this? But yeah, and it was very revealing because it was so frightening. I was like, oh my God, there's a baby on the table. And I mean, that's how I learned about this was through the drawings that this and the other thing too is it when my doubts would come up later, because there were parts of me that would say that were programmed to be like, nobody does this, you're crazy, or this is nobody actually hurts children like this is ridiculous, and I was battling with denial and doubt. But after a while, I would put these drawings away, but after a while, I was doing so many similar things. It became, well, that and the body memories were so powerful that my denial and my doubt started to be healed because, and then I started meeting other survivors too. So game over, but it was a gradual process of coming out of a lot of fear and how could this be? And, you know,
And you
so
have so much detail in here, from the
yeah,
words to the figures, what's on the table to the camera. So I mean, it had to have been. I mean, how do you just make this up? If people are going to make something up, it's detailed with all of this different iconography and
I didn't
shapes.
want to,
This
I didn't want
was
to be
clearly a
drawing stuff.
memory, not just some random thing that you thought up.
I didn't want to draw these drawings. I wanted to continue drawing the colorful drawings like the heart. I thought, that's my happy place. I want to stay there and do stuff like that. So I was very resistant to doing it. And if it wasn't for the body memories and the flashbacks being so powerful, it was almost like I have to draw this to get through these flashbacks. And I was hoping, okay, I remember saying to myself, well, maybe this will last, a couple of months and then it'll be over. Like these flashbacks. I didn't realize, I'm grateful I was so naive, because it allowed me to keep going. Like, let's just get through this. My body is trying to release this or heal this. I was learning gradually about body memories. There's a wonderful psychotherapist, Alice Miller, she wrote an entire book about body and memory. And I was also seeing a therapist I really had come to admire and trust, a woman, and she assured me, I wasn't telling her details. I just told her in a vague sense because I was too scared. I was also terrified during this part. Like, what are people going to think if they see these drawings? I was scared people would not want to know me. I'd be ostracized. So it was a relief to draw them, but at the same time, I was struggling a lot around the images themselves, and I would have much preferred not to. I would have much preferred to go back to the happy, colorful drawings,
100%.
This was another one too where I couldn't figure out how to draw people very well, so I just made them into shadow figures. That's what I told myself. Okay, we'll just go with that. And this is a very common memory in the beginning. I was being in a place where there would be a pool table or a billiard table, and they would be hurting me with the pool cues. And yeah, that's really sad. But it is what was happening. And I was getting sense that, yeah, that they were hurting children as a sacrifice. It was, you know, things were getting clearer to me as to why these people were doing these things, you know.
Was this at one of your father's bars?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think this was a different location, but I'm not positive. But I had a whole series of these. That was early on. And yeah.
The child's suffering is our sacrifice to the satanic energies. That's one of the things that
he's standing on a star that says mock her. And then the other star says defile, to defile. Yeah.
So telling. And then another happy one to interrupt the darkness.
Yes.
This is beautiful.
Yeah, and that was the flower that I saw in the morning. I was living in an apartment. This was years later. I was living in an apartment, but I was still processing memories, flashbacks, powerful ones. And the apartment I lived in had a big backyard with lots of greenery around the edges of it. And I walked out one morning and this beautiful calla lily had, I don't know if it blossomed it must have blossomed recently. It was so pristine and pure and new looking. It was so healing to me. And you know, things like this would give me hope. Nature, like, okay, to help me get through the intensity of the stuff I was dealing with. And it felt like you know, like the universe was saying, you know, hang in there, you're loved, you know. And
it's like a little God wink. And for people watching, one of the things that you'll find on Mary's website, which I'll have in the show notes, she has a little gallery of nature photos that she's taken, and they're brilliant. She's a really incredible photographer too. So if you guys want to see more of these, we didn't include a ton of them in today's presentation. This is a little special one, but you guys can check out Mary's website, and she has a gallery of really happy nature photos for people who want to see more of that.
Yeah, it was taken with a phone, my phone.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You're a really good photographer. I've enjoyed looking. I love nature too. It makes me so happy. And in that part of your gallery, I was really, really impressed by, and it just made me happy to look at those. I'm glad that you're taking photos of nature, because I know it makes you happy too.
I purposely put it in between the mind control and the ritual abuse drawings, because it's as an oasis. If people get overwhelmed, they can go back and look at the nature, because that's what it was. That's what nature does for me. It was like an oasis to come to, you know, after dealing with other stuff. Yeah.
Well, thank you for including that in today's. That's a little happy photo.
Yeah. I included this because of the color. Expressing with the color was very healing for me. The sadness and the pain and everything. But then the yellow was kind of the beautiful energy coming out of the children, you know. And I think these people who do these things, they've lost touch with their own light. They don't know how to access their own light. And they have this really twisted idea that they can get light from children or sacrificing children. It's very sick. But I did sense a lot of light around the children. So, yeah.
It's sad too. Above, I'm guessing this is you as a child. It says, "I want to die." I mean, just thinking whether it was just this feeling that you were overwhelmed with in that moment, and it wasn't something you actually spoke, just thinking about a child even having a thought about that, when children are just meant to play and have fun and not even know what death is. It just makes me so sad to see sweet little Mary, who had so much life, and she's just being so tormented and tortured by these evil people.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember not wanting to be there. There were times I didn't have the word I wanted to die, but I wanted to be. It was, like you said, a feeling, just a feeling of, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here anymore, so.
Oh my goodness.
But it was healing to use those pictures, those colors. Yeah.
Yeah. This one's unique too.
Yeah. That's done on a photocopy machine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's actually my daughter's hand. And this was also done before my memories. This was my subconscious giving me, because we were playing around with the photocopy machine at the library. And I said, put your hand on there and I can take a picture of your hand. And then later on, it was when I had the idea to make a paper magazine, and I thought, I'll put the hand on the cover and I'll call the magazine The Deceived. And so that was years later, but I loved that photo of the hand, and now I realize that reminds me of a child raising their hand saying, stay away or help me or something. That's what it, resonates to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. This looks like one too that could be hung up on a wall or put on a t-shirt or something along those lines.
Yeah. I was briefly in a band with a friend of mine, and we're going to use this as the logo for the band, The Deceived.
No way.
Yeah, that was the name of the band, The Deceived. And this was before my memories too. Yeah.
It's so fascinating seeing and hearing all the different ways that your unconscious mind was sharing so much with you unbeknownst to you.
Yeah.
That one's really neat.
I think that's the power of artistic freedom. I was hanging out with a lot of artists who were very free, and they didn't judge what was coming out of them. When my daughter was little, 9/11 happened. And she was in the 3rd grade, and the teacher told me after 9/11, he started seeing the kids doodling death images, skulls. Yeah, skulls and stuff. But he was a very wise teacher. There had been a rumor going around that we lived in San Francisco at the time, the next attack was going to be on the Golden Gate Bridge. And so he said, I think the kids are processing their fear of death. And my daughter wanted to get a hoodie with a skull on it. And it was a big skull. And she was so small. She was in the 3rd or 4th grade. And I was just like, but as an artist, I knew she's attracted to that image for a reason. And even some of the other women on the playgrounds, one of them came up to me and said, you let your daughter wear a skull? Like, people will judge that and say, no, you can't express that, right? And I said, yeah, I let her. And I told her about the teacher telling me the kids are working through their fear of death, because I think it's healthy to express that. That's how you work it out, So luckily I had gotten that mentality going early on, and I was letting stuff come out of me that if I was judging it, I might not have let out of me,
And how wonderful you're able to pass that on to your children and not stifle it like how school does. And, you were able to really allow them that creative expression that a lot of kids end up shutting off.
And it was just a phase. She came out of it. Like, it was just lasted like 6 months later, and then she was on to the colorful stuff again. But she needed to work it out, That's
amazing. You're able to conceptualize that. And what a wonderful teacher that was able to see that too and didn't discourage it and tried to encourage it.
Yeah, that school was actually had an arts focus, so they were very art informed, and that was brilliant to me because it gave me permission then to let my daughter, when it was actually a male teacher, and he said, when he told me that, I was like, oh, okay. You know, I'm not a bad mom because I let my daughter wear a skull on her sweatshirt. You know, she's just working, you know, so I'm very grateful for that teacher's wisdom.
I wonder too if that helped you later on. Maybe you'd be able to speak on it if you thought about that when you were pouring some of these things that seem very morbid, that you were worried about, you know, what will people think of me?
Right.
I wonder if you in some way gave yourself permission, having had been told that about your daughter, and you realized that you were processing too and were able to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I knew there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason for this, a good one, you know.
Yes.
Oh, that's a heavy one. I wish, yeah, this is a lot more recent. I actually drew this in the past year or two.
Oh, wow.
So, but yeah, my ability to draw just naturally evolved from repetition. That's all it was. And I started to get tired of doing really stick or, you know, basic figures. So I started looking for images in books or magazines that I could copy. And that officer is from a book I found on the Gestapo, Nazi Germany. So I used that photo of him standing there to use as a model as I drew, you know. And then I added the memories that were coming out with the flashback. Yeah. So it was very gradual. It started with the church, and then the church part, and then the children appeared in the cages, and then he did. So it was a progression, you know.
Absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, it was a horrible memory, and that is, yeah. It was, I believe, in a church. It was held in a church, that ritual.
And that's fascinating about where you found inspiration to draw faces. Somebody commented on the last video we did. We didn't talk in depth about your art, but there was just a couple that we flowed through and just showed. And somebody had asked, is that man in the photo, because you had one that had a detailed face, they asked if it was Michael Aquino, and it sort of did look like him. And I don't know if you recall that one or not, but that may have been the case as well, where it's somebody that you modeled the drawing after.
What I would do is I'd look for books. Like I ended up getting, my library had the Project Paperclip book. And it had it in large format, so large print, and so the photos were pretty big. And she had photos of all these Nazis who were brought into the United States, who were hardcore Nazis, like accused of war crimes and stuff. And I would look through these pictures of books on World War II or Project Paperclip or Germany, or the SS or the Gestapo, and I would just pick photos that resonated with me, that reminded me of my abusers. So I don't know, like I don't have a vivid memory of Michael Aquino or anything like that, but I would just pick pictures that reminded me of the same kind of energy, because a lot of those photos of like if you look at the Project Paperclip book, the photos of these men, they look psychotic. Some of these men, they look like monsters, some of them. And I resonated that was very validating, because I feel like some of the doctors and scientists around me were like that same energy, you know.
And you really were able to capture that in your own drawing, whether this was somebody that you personally saw or not. In this case, it wasn't. You really captured that psychoticness of one of the people that would do the things that we're looking at in this photo.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to capture that. This one, it's so weird. This one is such a weird, it kind of makes me smile, but it's just so, this was what I was doing before the memories came back. And I was drawing this is a painting, and it was from my intuition. And I did the heart with the smiley faces first, and then I all of a sudden, I think they came together, both of them. But I remember just being so disturbed, like, why do I want to write the word kill in here? Why? And then the blood, I'm like, what is that on the bottom? Like, I couldn't even acknowledge that might be blood. I was like, it's a puddle of some kind of reddish thing. What is that? But I just let it out. And that really says a lot to me, this painting, because I was this mix. This was me. I was this mix of being optimistic and into healing and anything's possible. And then there was this part of me that's like, we gotta look at this hellish stuff that's been repressed if you really want to heal. So, and it all came out in the painting.
That's a great way to express that, because I was looking at it and couldn't figure out how to explain what you just did, but that's sort of the same vibe. And I feel like the word kill, you almost see it in an afterthought. You're kind of looking at everything else first. And then that word strikes you, and then you sort of question the rest of the photo, but it's difficult too because it's so happy. And so you do see like the conflict between it, even in the color schemes. You went with that red and black with the kill and the blood. Everything else has that happy essence that a lot of your more loving and healing photos have had. That's fascinating, the layers that you were able to, or that your mind was constructing before you, and that you were able to look back on and understand.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I included this one because grieving has been a big part of my healing. I cry a lot. And I cry during flashbacks because it's part of the flashback. It's part of I had to repress so much grief as a child. They did not want any kind of emotional expression when I was in these places. And so I think it got stuck, all that grief in my body, and it has to come out. And that this was so validating, because I was frightened by my grief at one point, thinking, is this, am I stuck or something? Like, what is going on? But I realize now I'm not stuck. It's just that there was a lot of it I had to repress. And so this helped, this helped me be okay with the grief, basically. Yeah.
It's really a heartbreakingly beautiful picture, because you do get that mix. You see the healing element of the purging of things that were inside, but you also can pick up on the pain that comes with that.
Yeah.
Really incredible, though, the detail and the words and just the placement of things and how it creates a picture, and you kind of have to look at it to realize that there's words and icons in it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I remember thinking, why do I want to put XXX on my eyebrow like that? Because that was purely intuitive.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even see that. You're right.
Yeah, and I realized later, I think that has to do with porn movies are rated XXX. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Well, back in the day, they were. I don't know if they are anymore, because I used to live in New York, and 42nd Street had all these sex theaters. We can go and watch sex movies. I never went in there, but on the billboards, you'd see rated XXX when they would like advertise the movies. And so that's what later on I was like, oh, maybe that's to do with pornography or something.
That would make sense, especially because that was a big part of your the events that happened in childhood. And even on some of these drawings that you've created, there's a camera placed in in the scene.
That's right. They were filming and photographing things. Yeah.
It's disgusting. These ones are interesting.
Yeah. That was I went through a rage. I had a lot of anger to it was the child self too, because I was very attracted to those fat crayons. You know when you're a kid and you get those big thick crayons.
Yes.
I was in a drugstore, or an art place, and I saw them and I was like, ooh, I could feel my inner child just being like, ooh, get those, those look fun. And it would bring out my inner child, because I'd get these big sheets of paper that were just cheap paper. It was like, I think it was butcher block paper that they used. And I'd tear a piece off, and then I'd get on the floor with these big fat crayons and be like, wow. And it would get all this anger out. And I even used a pen. I can tell I used a pen on this, a red pen. And so I would do different ones, different things. And then it allowed me to release the anger. And usually for me, there's pain under the anger. It's a cover. And I'd start crying and the pain would come out. So that was very healing. But that was another thing I got from punk rock. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to make angry art. As long as you don't hurt anyone physically with your anger, it's okay to feel it. It's just make sure you channel it in a way that's not going to abuse another human being, right? So this was me channeling it artistically. Yeah.
And here's another one.
I still love these. I love them.
I do too.
There's a part of me that is like, yes, it's horrible. There's something, it's okay to be angry about it, that this even exists, that I even have to deal with this. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And I can feel that too. I remember being a child and having crayons like this. And I remember times in my coloring books or on paper, it just sometimes felt good to just wear down the crayon and just scribble it. If you had a lot of energy. And I remember my cousins doing that as I got a little bit older, and I'd watch them be like, oh, and just have fun with it. But you see how we color differently sometimes depending on how we're feeling too, right. The thickness of what we're craving to write with, or how hard we press whenever we're writing. And I'm sort of reminiscing, looking at this, I can feel that kind of frantic emotion pouring out and seeing it, even with the colors that you used.
Yeah, it's freeing. It was very freeing for me, but it was scary too, because I grew up in a family where anger was not allowed, especially, it was considered bad to be angry. So I had to repress it, but it was so freeing to draw it like that, scrawl it,
Yes. And even these letters or the symbols, it looks like one of them's a G. The other one kind of looks like a P, but it also looks like a backwards 4. But anyways, you can tell that you went over that a bunch of times, to make it thicker too.
Well, a part of me, I think it was a teenager part, realized that the acronym PIG stands for pedophiles in government.
Oh, you're right. That is an I.
Yeah, and so part of me just loved that, because
pedophiles in government.
Yeah, so I would write that often for a while. Yeah.
Your inner child knew what was up. That is brilliant.
Yeah.
Here's this one that we went over, and then and so I'll go to this one.
Yeah, that's another early one. Very early. And look, see, I couldn't even make people stand on the floor straight. They're just kind of flying all over the place. And it's, yeah, it's a horrible memory, but I got it out of me, you know?
I bet too, as a child going through things like this, being drugged, that's probably how things look. Everything probably doesn't look all steady and standing up straight. Everything probably looks like it's all over the place too. So I kind of relate to it
Wow.
in that way, seeing it from like a child's perspective, trying to contextualize this, things that no child even has words for, knowing that you were probably drugged and, the emotions that you were feeling going through this. So it probably actually did look somewhat like that to you in that moment.
Wow, that's a interesting way to look at it. That could very well be true.
Oh my goodness. And even the blood makes a swastika at the bottom. And then the words that you have for people who might be listening or kind of glancing down, up in the top right-hand corner, she wrote, "They don't care. They want money. They want power. They want authority. And they'll do everything they think they have to do to get it."
Yeah, anything they have to do to get it. And that was when, yeah, that's when things were really starting to get revealed to me, about what these memories were all about. That was the beginning. Yeah.
And you were able to document me, a girl 7.
Yeah.
So it was becoming more clear. And then again, you see you, whether you were saying it or thinking it, please don't hurt the baby. So you were feeling that in some capacity, which is so sad to think about, just how helpless you must have felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other kids going through this, not just me.
Yes.
This was later. And yeah. And being a robot, child robot, that was a theme they did about. They wanted me to be robotic. And I was given as a child when we still lived with my dad in Queens, and I was around the age of 7, I think. Out of nowhere, I got a robot for Christmas, a big one. And I had never expressed like in my conscious life as a child, I had never expressed an interest in robots or anything. And I'm wondering now if that was some kind of reinforcement for some kind of programming, because I remember being a kid and saying, looking at it, like, why did they give me this? Why did my parents give me this? And it could have been my father who gave it. And yeah, and it was quite large, when I was a kid, and it ran on batteries, and it would walk, and then its chest would open up and flash all these lights. It was black, and I was just like, but now I think, that probably was some kind of way of reinforcing.
Absolutely. There was a woman I just interviewed recently, Cheryl Rainfield. She had a drawing of robots and said it was part of her programming. And they'd tell the child it was a robot, and they'd take the child's heart out and say, "You're just a machine, you're a robot, you don't have a heart."
Oh, wow.
And then I realized that seems very synonymous with like Wizard of Oz, where there's that Tin Man who doesn't have a heart.
Yes, yes.
So I don't know if that was the same for you, but it does seem to be a theme. I've heard robots come up multiple times, and it seems, it's like a way of dehumanizing the child.
Wow, because, oh yeah, I think that's what it was. Because I did have a fascination with robots later too. Before my memories came back, there was this there was this attraction to them before the memories. Now that I have the memories, I'm like, I don't want anything, it's not like that anymore. But I used to I remember I used to really getting into learning how to draw like a hand, and I would take a picture of my hand holding a broomstick or something on my phone, and then use that as a guide to learn how to draw a hand, I remember that's how I learned to hold, do a stick, holding a hand holding a stick like that.
Interesting. That's a really good hand too. I was looking at that. I'm like, she did
This,
really good on that.
this was after several years of doing it over and over, like, so it did get easier and better, but it was another one of those moments where I'd get really focused and absorbed, and it would help lessen all the body sensations a great deal. It was very soothing in a way. Yeah.
And so what we're going to do now is we're going to just skip forward a little bit. We're going to bring Mary back on some time to dive more into more of her art, but I wanted to give her space and time to share some of her collages and poetry, since it's a drastically different mode of expression than some of the art. And she's done an incredible job with not just providing us some, but what she's created, I think will have a big impact on you guys. So I thought we'd start here, Mary, and we'll just go through a couple of these before we tie up for today.
Sure. This was actually done before my memories, the ritual abuse and mind control memories, came back.
Interesting.
And it's inspired by, there's a band called Joy Division I loved, and they have a song called Love Will Tear Us Apart. But I wanted to do intuitively. I said, love will tear you apart. And I think that was a message to myself. And it's a very sad photo, but I was drawn to this photo. It's a concentration camp survivor who threw himself on the electric fence to kill himself rather than be trapped in that play of horror. And this was another intuitive one, and I think it was a message to myself, but it was actually, now I see it as optimistic, like, love will tear you apart. It seems like it will tear you apart, but it's part of the healing process, meaning all these memories are coming back and they seem hellish and horrible, but it's actually part of the process of healing to go through these. And so for me, this is actually, it's a positive message in a way. It's hard to say that because the image is so brutal.
It almost reminds me of the inversion of the kill photo that we saw earlier, where it's like this happy photo and then it has this morbid word slapped in the middle of it. Yeah. This is kind of the opposite, where it's like the photo itself has this morbidity to it, but the message can be taken as sort of that silver lining in the horror that you're going through.
Yeah, that it's actually love. I'm not dying. This is, yes. Love is putting me through this so I can ultimately heal. Yeah. Yes. This is a poem. You want me to read it?
Yes, I would love that.
I used to work, this was written before my memories too. Okay. And I realize now this was, I used to work in a nightclub in New York called the Pyramid Club. And dancing, I had a lot of freedom at certain times in my job, and I could go out on the dance floor and dance. And the DJs at the Pyramid were incredible. They were very eclectic. They would choose music from all sorts of different kinds of music. And it was the 80s in New York, so there was a lot of great music going on, hip hop, and the pop music was great, coming out of England, and there was lots of dance music and freestyle music. And so dancing, I would hide in the corner and dance in the beginning, but gradually it's the same with drawing. I would just get more confident and free and enjoy it more. And I started coming out of my little shell in the corner. And I realized now that was healing me. Dancing was healing me, and on the music and being in that environment. It was very creative nightclub, a lot of freedom and creativity. So this poem is about that. It's called The Rhythm Releases Me. I had a death wish at the back of my mind. I was thrift store shopping for a suicide find. walking a street between hell and divine. Joie de vivre was no friend of mine. Belladonna babies were calling my name. Ever since you raped me, I just haven't been the same. Worthlessness wakes me up each day. I pretended to lie, but I'm not okay. Creatures of the night understand my plight. We party at the pyramid till the morning light. Dress and expression is our confession, healing my fear and ugly obsession. Free to express the truth at last, I purge the pain from my past, and the rhythm releases me. When I dance, I become so free. Flashing colors flood my mind. I awaken to my soul and a love divine. The beat, it teaches me to move, to groove, to be so free. The rhythm shows me how to move. I just let my body do what it wants to do. Children of the night, together we play. Freedom is our light, dancing our way. Gathering at the club, our temple of desire, to let the music and our love take us higher.
And this one's very close to your heart, I can tell. Dancing
Yeah.
very healing for you.
Very, very healing. And the music and the lights, it was all,
Yes, and just like you said, freedom, something you weren't given as a child, and just being able to step into that, even if it didn't all happen at once, where you just jumped on the dance floor,
right.
Seeing the journey, and just, I can just picture you on the dance floor, just having the time of your life, no care in the world, and you can just escape for a moment, and nothing of your past exists, just that moment, just being free.
Yeah, it really would liberate me. And I didn't have any memories back then at all. I just, but I knew I felt horrible a lot of the time. So, but when I wrote this, I did have some incest memories. That's why I talked about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about that, if you had a memory of being raped.
Yeah, I think I was referring to my dad at that point when I wrote it.
Right. Oh, I appreciate you sharing this. It's like, so, I mean, it's like heartbreaking, but you also just see breaking out through this. It's like you're bursting out of the pain. There's so much of it, and you can hear it in your words, but you also you can feel the undeniable joy and freedom that cascaded away from it because you chose to break free.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun people at that club, and there was a great sense of just enjoying and being creative and having a lot of fun. So it was a great environment for me. It was a very healing environment.
How long did you work there for?
It was like that was my the longest job I ever held at that time. I worked there for a year, and then I did some traveling. And when I came back, Hattie, the manager, Brian Butterick, he hired me again. And so I got to work there for another year or two. And it was the only job I could hold. All the other jobs I couldn't handle. But that job I could. Yeah.
That's wonderful. It's neat to be in your mind and sort of get a glimpse of your life then, and the duality of what you're going through with these repressed memories, starting to leak through and just still tormenting you, but also that desire to get free and to feel joy and to move past it.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Do you want to do one more? Do you have time to do one more?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to do this one, or was there another one?
I can do this one.
Okay. Let's do this one.
This was after the memories came back. Ritual abuse, mind control. Lost kid, throwaway child. They raped your mind. Now you've gone wild. Self-destruct is your desire, 'cause your brain's been trained to be a liar. Tells you you're worthless. It tells you you're small. undeserving of love, any love at all. Daddy sold you to the CIA. The doctors there had games to play. They wanted to see if they could find a way to erase and reprogram your mind. Electrocuted into outer space, you left your body without a trace. A swastika soldier wearing a grin opened your brain and climbed right in. Tortured into believing their lies, that your only value is between your thighs. A porno plaything for the pervert's lust. They broke your heart and smashed your trust. Silenced your voice and forced you to obey, then hid the memory of it all away. But there's a fire in you they couldn't control, a flame of truth called your soul, a place of power in your heart and brain their perverted science can't contain. A fighting spirit, a recognizer of truth, a knowing within their lies can't pollute. The truth that you're precious. Powerful and wise, and stronger than all of their swastika lies.
That is so well written, Mary. Oh my goodness. What a wonderful capture of the disparity to the recognition that somehow always overcame the darkness for you, that you always had this light in you. No matter all these horrific things that happened, somehow they could never contain you. Their programming didn't fully work on you, like you broke out of it, you broke free of it. And I think that's just such a powerful reminder for every survivor that feels that disparity and looks back on their past and just grieves, their childhood and the life that they were deprived of and the depravity of the things that they went through, to realize that somehow, some way, there was always that spark. They could never take your soul. They could never get to your heart. They could never break your spirit.
That's right.
And that, how amazing. What a miracle, especially considering everybody around you were these depraved, Nazis and these horrific abusers. But somehow, some way, you always had this light that just kept burning no matter how much water they tried to pour on it,
Well, I have a lot of people. I think a lot of help. I'm very blessed to survive, because I almost didn't survive my 20s and my 30s. But so it is a miracle. Do you know what I mean? It's like all.
Was this one written after you got your memories, or were you very surprised at this one and like, what does this mean?
Oh, no. This was definitely, I was having memories, and it just. I was going through a phase where I was writing a lot of poetry, and it just came out of me, but I was having flashbacks at this point. Yeah, I wrote it.
And before we start tying up, I'm just curious on your process on writing poems. I know with art, you'll put something on the paper and sort of work around it. With this, do you write words and then find a graphic to put behind it? Do you find the graphic and then start compiling the words that you're feeling from it? How do you construct these?
Well, I was listening. I'm really into these guided meditations by these people I love. They have a lot of healing meditations, and I know they were offering this series of meditations called Becoming a Writer. And I thought, oh, I'll check that out. And I got it, and I was listening to them, and it was all about freeing the flow and tapping into your, your higher conscious mind and just letting things flow. And there was a lot of positive affirmations, like, your writing is beautiful, blah, blah, blah. and, and I know, and I was practicing writing a lot with the book, Writing Down the Bones. She's like, pick a time and write nonstop really fast or don't reread, don't stop, just flow for 5, 10, or 15 minutes, however much you want. So I wanted to be a writer at that point. And so I was writing, I was doing the practice and listening to the meditations, and all of a sudden, one day it felt like I just got an idea and it just kind of flowed out. It really did. But this is after I'd been practicing for quite a while. So the whole thing would just, I'd get us the first line. Like usually I'd get the first line would come in and I'd be like, ooh, that sounds like a poem. And then I'd get my notebook out and it would start to come out. And so I had a whole series of poems. And then I thought, well, when I did my own little paper magazine, I did this. I said, oh, I'll put some of my poetry in there. And I thought, well, I don't want to do just the plain writing. And then I just I made collages out of them to make them more visually interesting, so that's how they came into being.
Would they usually all be written at once, or did you have some poems where you'd write a little bit and then come back to it?
I'd get the first couple of lines, and I knew I had to kind of stay with it to get the whole thing. It's a weird sensation. Like I would kind of, like that one, that death wish. I remember I was just thinking to myself, I had a death wish at the back of my mind. Like that first poem I read. And then it just had an energy around it. And I was like, oh, that sounds like it could be a poem. So I wrote that out, and then I kind of wait. And I sit there and I'm like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And then I'll start to get it. It might take a while, but usually it comes out all at once if I give myself the time to stay with it,
It was interesting listening to you speak it too, because on one hand, you hear a poem. On the other hand, knowing how passionate you are about music, I was almost hearing music with it as if it could have been a song too, which was kind of interesting. The way that some of the words were written and it had a flow to it, almost like a rhythm.
Yes. Yeah, I hear that too. And I think there was a point where I wanted to do that. I wanted to, have a band and put music together, but I'm not the greatest musician. So I was just doing poems, so yeah.
Gosh, Mary, this was just an emotional roller coaster going through this today.
Yeah, thank you.
To love, to the poems, to, especially that last one just really hits you, but then at that last paragraph sort of lifts you out of it, and it really paints like a big picture of what we're talking about today. And yeah. I just want to thank you with all my heart for your vulnerability to share art. It is a very vulnerable thing. It's something that we create, and if it's not a career or something, it can be intimidating to share some of it, especially from early days. But I think with the context that we're sharing, especially with how this can be such an outlet for healing, it's so important that we empower people, whether you're a survivor or not, to get back to, that childlike self that gets washed away and mind controlled out of us in school. That creativity is for everybody, and that you can get better, and seeing your process of some of your earlier drawings to the more refinement of the new ones that have been more recent and how good they are. Oh my gosh, that's so neat. Like, you don't have to be an artist since being a kid to be good at it. You just need to practice, just like how you said with getting on a bike.
It was a natural progression. I just gradually started to get easier, and I want everyone to go out and have bands. I want people to make bands, and there'll be MK Ultra Survivor bands and stuff. And there'll be a whole genre of music of just like survivor music and stuff. That would be great,
That would be amazing. And for the survivor, this will be my last question, and then we'll share where people can connect with you. For survivors out there, or non-survivors who haven't yet got into journalism or art or drawing or even music, what's a good starting point for them? I know you showed that book, so maybe that would be a good place for people to read that book that you shared earlier. But was there anything that you just went out and got that was like really easier for you to just pick up whenever you were starting? And how would you suggest somebody get started if they're kind of intimidated by the process of creating?
There's online. This is a magazine I found pretty early on. I don't know if it's called Raw Vision. Can you see it?
Yes, I'm bringing it up on the screen too. Oh, look at that.
It is, there is a whole movement. It's called Raw. They have different names of it in different countries, but it's just people who create who are not skilled, but they just create for the love of creating. And some people do like structures in their backyards. Check out this guy. He builds this out of like tin cans and glass bottles.
What? That looks like an actual architecture. That's amazing.
I know. And he, but it's inspiring me. It inspired me. I found it years ago, these kind of magazines. They're expensive, but they do have an online version now that's much more affordable. And it helped me connect with people all over the world who do not necessarily are, studied art formally, but they just have this desire to be creative. And they have museums that cater to these people. In France, it's very popular. All over the United States, they call it folk art in the United States. But so if you can, I would surround myself with people who are creative or are doing things, or connect with them in somehow, and let yourself be inspired by other people. And it also freed me to see people who like make things just with the skills they have, just really simple thing. This guy draws these weird, it looks like some kind of can you see that? Is it clear?
Pull it back just a little bit. There we go. Yeah, for some reason, look how cool.
The drawings that look like slices of trees.
Yeah.
But this is the thing that makes him happy, And I love stuff like this. It just makes my heart explode with happiness, like, oh, anybody can do this and enjoy doing it, So that's one thing. And then I would very privately, very secretly, give yourself a little notebook and some basic tools. Doesn't have to be fancy. I use a lot of ballpoint pens, or certain kind of, they're called Bic Cristal. They're like the thick flow ballpoints, and just let you play with what comes out, play with what images want to come out, and you don't have to show it to anybody. You can just keep it. But you might find that it's very healing. It really helps you, especially if you're processing memories and stuff. And just be kind and gentle. It takes courage to express this stuff. So give yourself a pat on the back for even, being willing to look at this stuff. Yeah. It's very special. I wanted to read this one quote. I put this in my zine. It's called Messages for Survivors. There's just one of them I thought was really beautiful. And this is actually on my website. There's a blog post called New Messages for Survivors. It's written by a therapist called Holly Hector, and it's from the book Breaking the Circle of Satanic Ritual Abuse by Daniel Ryder. And one of the messages she says is, you survived what few humans could have. Honor that. You employed resources from within that few people develop or call on. Honor your survival. Honor your creativity. Honor your intelligence to cope and adapt. Take these gifts and redirect them into your healing process. You are more capable than most. Believe it. And that's from a therapist who's worked with many, many survivors.
That is powerful. What a reminder. It's just so horrific what survivors are told growing up and how dehumanized they are with words, actions, with these tortures. But it's all to make you forget how special you are and how powerful you are, because they know that about you. And it's so wonderful now that you and others are helping survivors remember that, that those things were lies, that the people doing this didn't want you to realize your potential and to realize how amazing you are, but they knew it all along. That's and right. It's really important that we take that back from them. They don't get to have that.
I think
they never did, but they especially now don't get to have it. We get to take it back.
Yeah, I think they're terrified of our power. That's why they tried to squash it.
100%. Yeah. Exactly. So thank you for that. That was really inspiring. And speaking of inspiring, you mentioned.
I want to thank you, Emma.
You mentioned surround yourself.
I do. I want to thank you because I think it takes a very special person to provide a safe space for people to express this. And I feel so blessed to have met you and to know you. And so, thank you.
I feel the same way about you, Mary. I know exactly why the name Mary Sunshine was given to you, and I hope that always stays. Speaking of light, and one of the things you mentioned earlier was to surround yourself with, people who are on a similar journey as you, to be inspired. And who better to do that with than you, the wonderful, amazing, inspiring woman that we just heard today. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to share about your Instagram and your website. And you're somebody that I hope everybody on here goes in and supports and follows. And it warms my heart that so many people already have connected with you. But let's share where people can connect with you.
I have a website called Sparrow Forever Free, and it's SPARROW, the number 4, and then EVERFREE.com, sparrowforeverfree.com. And you can see there's a bunch of art, and I have a blog, and my story is up there. And I also have a resource page with a list of all the books and videos, most of the books and videos that have helped me. Yeah, so that might be helpful to people. But I'm always adding to it, of course. It's always growing. There's the book that I got that last reading from, Breaking the Circle of Satanic Ritual Abuse. And then there's also a link on the website to the Instagram, which is Sparrow Dose at Instagram, SPARROWDOSE. And I just post my drawings on there. And these are clips that Emma made from the last interview I did with her. So that was awesome. Thank you, Emma.
Oh my gosh. And just the support, it's, I'm sure for you especially, it can be scary putting yourself out there and having some of these things be heard, especially by strangers on the internet. But man, just how I mentioned earlier, the overwhelming love and support and compassion, some of it just made me want to cry, like looking at those comments and just seeing people just reaching out and giving you like a virtual hug, and just really taking in what you said and like empathizing with it. And just wonderful.
I was crying some of the quotes. It was just so loving, so accepting and supportive. Yeah.
And for if you're looking where it says high trigger alert on some of these other ones, Mary puts that on her artwork. As you guys saw today, some of it is it can be triggering if you're not expecting it. So she gives everybody a warning. So for those photos, for these posts, I should say, you can click on it and then you just swipe over and then you can see the artwork behind it. Yep.
Yeah.
And so that is at, like she said, Sparrow Dose. And so I'm going to have that below also for you guys to connect with. And her website does have a lot of information on here from resources. And thank you for putting that together. It's really wonderful to have spaces that people can go where there's lists of things to where they're not just Googling and taking guesses on what might help and what not. It's really great that survivors are starting to put together the books or podcasts or resources, whatever it is that help them, you know, and hopefully a big help for other people who are going through a healing process or wanting to learn more, or if you work with survivors, if you're a therapist or a spouse. It's really wonderful that we have these lists being compiled by you and others that can help us quickly and swiftly get to kind of the bottom of all this, and we can have spaces that we can go to find multiple different books and resources that we can look through to help with healing and supporting. So thank you so much for putting this together. This is a very extensive list. And you also have videos and websites and
yeah, there's a lot of great websites on there. By some of them are by other survivors, like RA Info is Jean Reisman's. She put that was the very first, hers was the very first site on the internet that dealt with ritual abuse.
Oh.
Yeah.
In the 50 Voices of Ritual Abuse, you were featured on that. That was and still is an incredible project that was put together. And I'm really grateful that you were included in that.
And it's amazing. There's people all over the world saying the same stories. There's women on there who don't even speak, we don't even speak the same language, and the details of their story are similar. Yeah, women from Germany and Austria. Yeah.
Really incredible. And if you guys feel called to make donations, she does have a donation button here too. It's really helpful for survivors. A lot of you ask how you can help. Supporting online is one, and sharing, it's free. You guys can go follow on their social media and share and engage and help uplift them in the algorithms. Going to their websites and engaging and sharing their blogs, or going through the resources page, sharing their websites. That's a nice, free, really easy way that you guys can support. And then through donations, you know, if we need more equipment, if Mary is bringing her book into fruition that she's been daydreaming about, you know, that costs money. And so your donations are just really helpful to help survivors continue doing what they're doing. And even art can be really expensive as you're refining your art and you get different paints or different brushes or paper, buy bigger canvases. You know, there can be a lot of different expenses when it comes to healing. So if you guys feel called to donate, her donate button's there also, and her Instagram, I'll have that below as well. And was there anything else that you wanted to share, Mary, before we wrap up for today?
Let me see. No, I think we covered it all. That's been great.
Incredible. Oh my gosh. This episode like really uplifted me, even though it was hard to talk about it. I feel like that for some reason, having the visuals with hearing about things, it just really helps put context to these really hard things and helps people see that you can heal your way through it. That even though it's really dark, there's that light at the end of the tunnel, you know, and you're so wonderful at having that be the message through all the darkness, that the light's always still there and that you can find it. So just thank you, Mary, for everything that you do, for all the work that you do with survivors, and for uplifting people, and for sharing, and for your vulnerability, and just for being you. You really are a ray of sunshine, and we're so honored and lucky that we get to learn from and hear from you.
Oh, thank you, Emma. It takes one to know one. So, right back at you. I think you're a real light too, a beautiful light. And so, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you too. And thank all of you listening. We couldn't do this without all of you. And so go in the show notes, like I said, connect with Mary I'll have all my links down there below as well. Support wherever you guys can and however you can, and just keep in the fight. You know, we could not do this without you guys. So whether or not you guys, yeah. Some people feel like they're not doing enough, but just sitting here listening, you guys are all heroes for being able to just be here and to witness, and don't ever forget that. And so with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.